What are you simpletons doing?
2023 is almost at a close, and the Stellaris developers have got one last gift for us. The Technology Rework Open Beta that is right now live and will be live through into the new year. In this video, I'm going to go through all the details we have about this technology rework and rebalance, and try to explain both what is going on and what this will mean for us and our games. Let's dive in and find out. So why is technology changing? Why are we getting a rebalance? Stellaris has undergone a significant amount of power creep over the years, and the speed at which players are able to burn through the entire technology tree is much higher than is healthy for the game. Due to the large number of stacking research speed modifiers, repeatable technologies are reached far too early in the game. Another power creep issue mentioned by many players is that it has also become trivial to stack large numbers of ship build cost and ship upkeep reduction modifiers. And I have to say, thank goodness the devs are mentioning this. This is something that people have been complaining about for some time. The Holiday Open Beta will be a feature branch that contains the following changes, which may or may not go into 3.11 or 3.12 or any release at all for that matter. Similar to how the devs handled the industrial districts several years ago, they are intentionally keeping these separated from core 3.11 development and isolating this in a parallel track so they can work on what's going on, right? That's the statement from the developers. Alongside this statement, we've also, of course, got quite a comprehensive patch notes for this open beta. If you'd like to try out this tech rebalance immediately, you can go to Steam, go to Stellaris, go to the betas tab, and then opt into this open beta until January the 15th of 2024. Based on how it goes, it may or may not end up in 3.11 as the devs have said, and that is the Eridanus update, an update planned for the first quarter of 2024. So we assume it's going to be after January the 15th, but we really don't know when 3.11 will be dropping. Let's look through the patch notes now. I'm going to read through all of them and at certain times break away to jump into the beta, look at some of the things we've got going on there, and on top of that, for those of you out there that are absolutely besotted with graphs, well, I've got some great news for you. I've got some lovely graphs we can look at to try and understand what's going on just a little bit better. Let's start now with the features of this open beta. The first feature is quite a big one. The developers have replaced basic research technologies such as quantum theory with breakthrough technologies. Quantum theory, for those of you that may not remember, usually granted plus 20% research output from jobs for physics research only. This is now a breakthrough technology. Breakthrough technologies will only appear once you have researched enough techs of your current tier, and they are required for you to research the next tier in technology. At this point, I actually think we need to break away from the patch notes for a moment and take a look at what is going on. So, for those of you that don't know, Stellaris does in fact have a tech tree. You don't get to see it in game, but I promise you it is there. What we are looking at right now is a lovely visual representation of the tech tree made by Turanar. You can go out and find this on the internet. I'll put a link down to it in the description below. But this is a great visual representation. So we can see here that not only is there a tree, there are different tiers to the technology. All of the starting technologies in the game are tier 0, and when you first start researching technologies from the beginning, you'll be looking at tier 1 technologies. At present in Stellaris, in order to research tier 2 technologies, you have to first unlock 6 other tier 1 technologies, and then you'll start rolling tier 2 technologies. With the new tech rework, you are going to have to research 6 tier 1 technologies, and then you'll get the option of researching your breakthrough technology, which in this case is quantum theory. In order to then get to tier 3, we will have to research 6 tier 2 technologies, and then we will get the option of researching our tier 3 breakthrough, which is applied quantum physics. And then you can see where this is going up and up and up. we have to research 6 technologies from an individual tier, and then the associated breakthrough technology. Each tier gets progressively more expensive, and we're going to be looking at what all of that means in just a moment, but let's dive back to the patch notes for now. These breakthrough technologies become easier, read cheaper, to research based on the number of other empires that you have low-tech intel on that have already researched them. So this is basically going to be a tech spreading mechanic, a bit like institutions in EU4, I mean vaguely like institutions in EU4, and that tech low intel level, what is that? Well, that is 30 intel. To get low tech intel, you need 30 intel on other empires, which is relatively straightforward to do pretty early on. You do need to research a few technologies or get a few different things to boost your intel, but you should be able to sit at 30 without the need to build spy networks. Enigmatic engineering will block your breakthrough technologies from spreading. This is actually massive. This means that if you're going for a tech rush build, you definitely will want to be taking enigmatic engineering in Stellaris now, because it means if you're researching these breakthrough technologies first and you want to remain with your competitive advantage, don't forget what we just read. Breakthrough technologies are easier to research if other empires have already researched them first. So if you're the first one to do it, you'll be paying the most in terms of cost, and then other empires will be paying less thanks to your brave use of technology. We don't want that, so therefore we probably want to take enigmatic engineering and block that. Very, very awesome. Events that give progress towards random technologies can grant progress towards breakthrough technologies, but will not give as much as they would to a regular technology. That is interesting. So breakthrough techs are going to be rather difficult to research. And looking at the numbers for breakthrough techs, that is definitely the case. These breakthrough technologies are very, very expensive though. Here we have unified field theory, which is the tier 2 breakthrough technology for physics, and with a 23% increase to research cost from Empire Sprawl, I had around 200 Empire Sprawl or so. This technology costs over 45,000 research points. And that's the tier 2 breakthrough. That's a base cost of 39,000, which used to be, in the previous scheme, the base cost of a tier 5 technology. So with the current metrics, and don't forget this is an open beta, the important thing here is the feedback we give to the devs, but with the current metrics, going from tier 2 to tier 3 technology requires you to invest in a technology that would be equivalent to researching a tier 5 or a repeatable technology in the past. That is wildly, wildly expensive just to get up to tier 3. And that's before we even look at the changes to tech cost and research production, because both of those things have been really, really nerfed and not in favor of getting more technology. And speaking of things that are very high cost, getting your hands on all of the Stellaris DLC can be very expensive. Luckily, Humble Bundle have a sale on now until January the 4th. You can get up to 50% off on selected DLC and 70% off on the base game of Stellaris. Included in these discounts for the first time ever is a 50% reduction to the Stellaris Overlord DLC, which makes it a very, very juicy purchase, and 20% off on Stellaris First Contact and Stellaris Galactic Paragons, 2 DLC that were released only this year. By following the link down in the description below, you can get your hands on these discounts and support this channel. In order, I think, to make this change to technology a bit more palatable, and that's the balance changes we're going to look over in a moment, there are now distinct technology and tradition cost sliders in Galaxy setup. So if you want to attempt to somewhat go back to the old technology costs, you could drastically reduce tech cost in your Galaxy setup whilst leaving tradition costs mostly the same. The devs have also improved the game by adding a notification message when a new pop settles in Zaya, a Gaia planet in Izilash. I don't really remember what that's all about, but good, I'm glad they've improved that. The balance changes are going to have a massive impact on technology, the speed we can research it, and what we can research. We also, though, have quite a few other balance changes included in this open beta. First amongst those are changes to the Galactic Doorstep origin. They have added gateway cost and megastructure build speed modifiers to the Galactic Doorstep origin. That's pretty awesome. Galactic Doorstep Event Chain now directly rewards the gateway activation technology and gives far more progress on the gateway construction technology. I think this is good. I think this definitely moves it from being, F tier, or realistically the bottom of C tier, but I just hate it so much that it should go in F tier, up to the top of C tier, possibly the bottom of B tier. What I would like to see from this technology is something similar to the Cybrex. I honestly think it maybe should just guarantee us the option of researching megastructure technology when we finish down that chain. Possibly after researching gateway construction technology, we then unlock the option of megastructure technology, the mega engineering technology. I'm not sure exactly where you would balance it, but I think that would go a long way to making this origin much more playable, much more interesting, and much more rewarding without being overpowered and broken. They have increased the effect of Empire size on technology to match its effect on tradition. If you remember that screenshot I brought up earlier of the tech cost, I mentioned it was plus 23% at only 215 Empire size. The eagle-eyed amongst you will have noticed that is double the previous tech cost increase from Empire. I think this is a good thing. I think that tech cost has been too high for too long. This is a direct bonus to tall playstyles over wide, especially if you're using a Sovereign Guardianship. I did release a build related to that where we could get our Empire size under 100. If you're going for that sort of build where we have infinite pops and basically no sprawl from them, then this is a direct boost to you. And if you're a wide Empire, it's a little bit of a slap in the face, but I think that is a good thing. They have rebalanced research speed modifiers. Most sources of research speed now have a corresponding increase in researcher job upkeep. What does this mean? Well, here we have the veteran class statistician. That still grants us plus 5% research speed when this leader is on the council. However, it now gives an empire-wide modifier of plus 5% researchers upkeep, meaning they require an additional 5% consumer goods from their jobs, which is at 2 consumer goods per researcher, 0.1 additional consumer goods. That doesn't sound like very much, and that's because it isn't, but if we stack a lot of research speed modifiers together, let's say we get up to, plus 50 or plus 100% with modifiers like this, we'd be looking at a plus 100% researcher upkeep, meaning yes, we're researching twice as quickly, but it's costing us twice as many consumer goods. So from a pop efficiency point of view, we are needing additional pops to produce consumer goods, which is very, very unpleasant. That is reducing our overall pop efficiency empire-wide. There are some things I want to mention here. First off, it seems like research agreements don't increase researcher upkeep. Any modifiers that directly boost researcher job output also don't increase researcher upkeep. It's just research speed modifiers. So what we really want to do is look at ways of boosting our researcher output without necessarily increasing research speed, unless we can afford to spend those extra pops on consumer goods. Remember though, any extra pops which we are using to make more consumer goods because our upkeep is higher are pops that we cannot use as researchers to further boost our research income. So overall, this is a direct nerf to research output in your empire. Unless you're a trade-based empire and you have a trade federation and you've just been laughing in consumer goods the whole game long anyway and not knowing what to do with them, in that case, you're gonna continue laughing all the way to the bank. And if you're enjoying this video, please increase the research speed of that like button. The developers have removed or adjusted many sources of ship cost and upkeep reductions from the game. Military build-up agenda now improves ship build speed and reduces claim costs. it still reduces war exhaustion on completion as well. Naval Procurement Officer Counselor now improves ship build speed. Crusader Spirit Civic now improves ship build speed. All of these improved ship build speeds generally used to reduce ship cost, and they've switched that over. Psionic Supremacy Eater of Worlds Finisher no longer reduces ship build costs. Victor's improved fleet logistics trait now reduces ship build costs by 10% instead of 20%, and I think including some reductions is still alright. What I really feel is important here is that we cannot be allowed to stack reductions in such a way as to get down to minus 90% or beyond, because of additive bonuses basically spiraling out of control. You see, going from 100% ship build cost to 90%, which is a 10% reduction, means instead of building 10 ships, we can now build just over 11. However, when we go from 80% reduction to 90% reduction right at the end of the curve here, which is again only an additional 10% decrease, we go from being able to build 10 ships to building 20 at the same cost. That is absolutely crazy, and compared to base cost, that means one ship at the start of the game is going to be the same price as 10 ships later on in the game at that minus 90%. On top of that, ship build cost reductions actually make the game easier for the player on higher difficulty levels. Because on higher difficulty levels, the AI already starts at Grand Admiral, for example, with a minus 60% build cost reduction for all of their ships. This means they can only ever gain an additional minus 30%. Whereas you as the player can go all the way up to minus 90%, the same as the AI can get up to, but that means that they're no longer getting their Grand Admiral bonus, and thus it just makes the AI overall weaker. I think that really we shouldn't have any build cost reductions, but if players want them, if the community want them, probably maxing out at minus 50%, so getting 2 ships for the price of 1, is probably where we should leave that at the absolute maximum. That's still really, really powerful. The progress-oriented modifier no longer reduces ship build cost. Match tradition in the enmity tree bonus to ship build cost is reduced to 5% instead of 10%. The master shipwrights tradition in the supremacy tree no longer reduces ship build costs. This, I think, overall, including the nerf to the military build-up agenda, means that supremacy is no longer an auto pick, and it's no longer the top of the S tier. I still think it's very good. The finisher getting the policy for our ships is really good. There are other bonuses we get in there that are good as well, but it's no longer an auto pick as your second or third tradition if you're going to be doing any fighting. It's now probably A tier, possibly the top of B tier. Military Pioneer trait now reduces starbase upgrade costs instead of ship build costs. The Shipwright trait no longer reduces ship build costs. They have reduced the penalty the Irenic trait applies to ship build costs. Sanctum of the Eater, the special building you get if you have the Eater of Worlds patron, now only reduces ship upkeep by 5% from the previous 10. Mark of the Instrument Ship component no longer reduces ship upkeep, I think kind of making that component a little useless. The Grand Fleet Ambition now increases power projection instead of reducing ship upkeep. I think that kind of makes Grand Fleet, which used to reduce ship upkeep by 20% and increase naval capacity by 20%, a little on the useless side. It is still alright, it's still good, we're still going to get bonuses from having 20% extra naval capacity. However, that minus 20% was a massive modifier later in the game, and this basically, all of these changes really are making defeating a 25 times crisis or playing against the Grand Admiral harder overall. Some of the things we're changing here are going to make it easier overall, but I'll get into those changes as we get to them a little bit later. Right, so Letter of Marque now reduces ship upkeep by 5% instead of 10%, and Bulwark ship upkeep reductions are reduced by 50%. Bulwarks have been way too powerful for quite a while, especially if you can trick the AI into becoming your overlord and then just milk them for all of their resources. I think reducing the power of Bulwark is a good thing for the balance of the game overall. Logistic Understanding, lovingly called the box trait by many PvP players, Armada Logistician, and Gunboat Diplomat traits now only reduce ship upkeep while the fleet is docked. This is very similar to the special starbase building that reduces ship upkeep while docked by 25%. I actually think this is quite a good thing in game and quite balanced. It means you can build up large fleets and have kind of a fleet in being strategy where you keep your navy at home. You don't actually go out and attack people, but you can use this navy diplomatically for the diplo weight bonuses, and if push comes to shove, you can sally forth and attack with it. However, you can't simply go on the aggressive forever and stay out of dock. If you stay out of dock, the upkeep costs are going to be very high. You won't be getting these bonuses. I think this is a good place to go. We'll have to see if it's still too powerful, because Logistic Understanding, Armada, Logistician together, those reductions of ship upkeep are completely broken. Getting to minus 90% ship upkeep in the game, which is relatively possible with quite a few different empire types, means that you can field a navy 10 times as large, or you can go 10 times over your naval capacity, and still it will seem like you're just at your normal naval cap. So you can field 10 times as many ships. This leads to having, I don't know, like 1,000 naval capacity worth of ships and paying 5 alloys a month and 30 energy credits. Really, really crazy numbers, which when combined with the craziness we've been having with technology, kind of maxing out the tree at year 80 to 100, I'm glad the devs are wading in and they're trying to bring the mystery back to the game. They're trying to slow things down so we don't arrive at massive fleets and massive technological advantages so early. The developers have increased technology costs, especially those of higher tier technology. This is by using a special formula of theirs. So the tech curve has been changed from 1,000 times 2 to the power n, where n is the tier of the technology, to 500 multiplied by 2 to the n plus 3 to the n. This makes the difference between early and late game technologies more distinct without drastically increasing the cost of early game technologies. This is where we get to start looking at those lovely, lovely graphs. So what do these tech costs mean for you, the tech consumer at home? Let's start by looking at what the actual tech costs were. Important thing to note here, this is the base cost for any particular tier. Some technologies in every tier are more expensive, so this is just the minimum cost you will ever find. With the old scheme, Tier 0 technologies cost 1,000 tech points, and remember this is 1 times tech cost as well. Tier 1, 2,000, Tier 2, 4,000, Tier 3, 8,000, Tier 4, 16,000, Tier 5, 32,000. So every tier we go up, those tech costs are doubling. Now, however, it's going to be even more expensive. Going from Tier 0 to Tier 1, we're looking at 2,500, then 6,500, then 17,500. Tier 3 technologies at base are going to be twice as expensive as Tier 3 used to be. Tier 4 will be 48,500. That's over 3 times as expensive. And at Tier 5, we're looking at 137,500 research points. That's a massive number. That's a bonkers number. It's 4 times the previous cost. I'm pretty convinced that these numbers will get balanced a bit and reduced, or at least I think they will. I'm pretty sure these curves are a little too steep. It's a little too aggressive, and I think the devs will rein this back just a bit. But not only have the developers changed the cost of these technologies and made them more expensive, they've also reduced the output of researcher jobs. Researchers and their Gestalt equivalents now produce 3 of each research instead of 4. They've taken a 25% base reduction on top of the fact that we no longer have those plus 20% research jobs output technologies 3 of each for 3 different technology classes for a total of plus 60%. So they've really hammered home at reducing our sources of research. Head researchers now produce 4 of each research instead of 6. The effectiveness of the Ministry of Science has been halved. Astral researchers now produce 5 physics and 1 of each other research instead of 5 physics and 2 of each other research, which is, that's quite a few balance changes. What does this mean in terms of how long it will take us to research technology now in the game when we combine in this new cost and lower output? We are now facing the Great Research Recession, ladies and gentlemen, and let's see what the graphs have to tell us. In this graph, I'm looking at the difference in terms of a percentage difference from the old version to the new. The red curve here is the difference in research points required to research a technology from any particular tier. So these percentages are 0, of course tier 0 is the same, tier 1 25%, tier 2 62.5%, tier 3 118, tier 4 203, tier 5 329.69%. Those are the differences of the previous graph we looked at. So researching a tier 5 technology now, in terms of the research points, not the time it takes to research, that is a different curve on this graph, is now 329% more expensive. I've also now tried to factor in these new tech outputs. I'm not trying to look at the changes we are now getting to our research output bonuses, just that base output early on in the game. So these numbers are actually better than the reality. The reality is you'll be researching even slower than these estimates. These are the best case estimates that are already wrong, okay? If you don't understand what I mean, please leave me a comment down below and I will try to explain in a little bit more detail. But now let's dive into the blue curve. So currently our researchers produce 4 research points per month. In the new scheme, they produce 3. Combining this with the change in research cost, this means a tier 0 technology, which is important because some origins require you to research tier 0 technologies, broken shackles for example. That is going to take 33% longer. Tier 1 technologies are going to take 66% longer. So tier 1 techs now take at least 2/3 as long, if not longer, because they've nerfed our research speed bonuses and they've removed the technologies that increase research output from jobs. Tier 2 are taking 116% longer, Tier 3 191% longer, Tier 4 300% longer, and Tier 5 taking the cake at 472%. At that level, I've not factored in the fact that by Tier 5 you would normally be getting plus 60% additional research output from jobs and around 80 to 100% additional research speed bonuses. That's lower in the new tech rework, and that kind of means we're looking at probably more like 600 or 700% the time. That means if you want to research a repeatable technology, it will take you 6 to 7 times as long as it used to. And that's before we factor in changes from Empire Sprawl. Empire Sprawl, or Empire Size I should say, effects have now been doubled. Meaning we're looking at the apocalypse in terms of researching technologies. Trying to research a tier 5 technology is probably going to take you 10 times as long with these new metrics than it used to. I honestly think they've gone too far with this. They need to scale it back. I love the direction they've gone in. I do think tech has been too powerful for too long, but these research times at the top end are just ludicrous. No one should be spending 20 or 30 years in-game researching a tier 5 technology. It's simply bonkers. I think it needs a rework, a rebalance, but yes, this is definitely too far. Please wheel it back in a little bit. These later game increases are not the only major change that will affect the gameplay in patch 3.11 if these changes go ahead. So, The breakthrough technologies are providing quite a large bottleneck for not just the players but also for AI empires. Researching destroyer technology can now be completed around year 30 roughly if you really put your heart and soul into researching technology. But for AI empires on Grand Admiral, the highest difficulty level with no scaling modifier, so that's maximum difficulty from day one, you don't really see destroyers in the galaxy much before year 50, and cruisers are 20, 30 years after that. This means that research has been basically nerfed into the ground, and the optimum strategy for defeating a Grand Admiral opponent early on is to simply not bother with building any research labs. Don't send any of your population to working research jobs. Do get some research income from the orbital research facilities. There's no harm in grabbing that, but make sure your population are instead producing lots and lots of alloys and become an alloy monkey. Return to monkey and alloy rush. That is now basically the optimum early game strategy. You can deal with AI empires that have slightly better technology early on by simply defeating them with twice as many ships. In larger sized galaxies, which are very, very unstable, especially in the late game, if you're playing on 1,000 stars, for example, eventually you are going to run out of steam. You will not be able to gobble up the whole galaxy before they get up to cruiser level technology and then present a serious and impenetrable threat to your empire. However, on 200 to 400 stars, you can relatively confidently eat up 2, 3, or 4 neighboring empires, then vassalize a couple of empires and win the game before they can even get their technology levels up. This is a new problem that now needs to be addressed by the developers, because what is the AI going to be doing when they don't have these breakthrough technologies? Breakthrough technologies start off very, very expensive, but reduced in cost very, very quickly. If just 2 of your neighbors have the tier 2 breakthrough technology, for example, it goes from being 39,000 down to around 19,000, which is half the cost. So going for an alloy rush strategy is actually better for you. You're going to find it even easier to tech up later on in the game when you want to catch up with your neighbors, your rivals, anyone that you seem to have left alive. Knights of the Toxic God has also been rebalanced. They've slightly reduced the research output for Knight and Lord Commander jobs. Honestly, I don't think this was necessary, but fair enough. They've refactored how the output scaling for Knights from Squires functions. These now behave as normal additive modifiers instead of multiplicative modifiers. That's quite a big nerf, actually. Knights now correctly inherit production modifiers from researchers and administrators. This means they're going to be producing more research output, which is a bonus. They've slightly reduced the Unity and research output for Knight and Lord Commander jobs. That has kind of already been mentioned, but they've mentioned it again because it's now Unity as well that's being reduced. The Knight output modifier now only applies to resources like other job output modifiers. The Fortress Habitat designation for Knights no longer provides +1 defensive army per pop on the habitat. Instead, each Squire job will provide that +1 defensive army. So the fortresses are no longer as impregnable. Instead of 10 good men, you probably only need 9 to impregnate the bitch. Squires now increase the resource output of Knights by 2.5%, not 2% per Squire. And the Luminous Blades modifier from the Knight's Quest now removes the alloy upkeep of Knights and gives +25% army damage instead of an empire-wide +1.5% alloy production modifier per Knight. Honestly, I don't think any of these changes, except the bonuses here, were necessary. None of these nerfs are required. Knights is not a very strong origin. There is a massive economic malice to starting with Knights. Yes, you can end up with very high research production later on, but why couldn't we have had that? I don't believe it would have made Knights overpowered and broken. It would have simply made Knights an actual viable strategy that gives you quite a high investment cost early on, but quite a good reward later in the game. Given that generally Stellaris is a game where we want small bonuses early that will allow us to scale and snowball faster and faster, and Knights kind of does the opposite of that, I really don't think we needed to nerf it at all. This basically just smashes knights further and further into the F tier. Delegate Galactic community focus traits now have a small chance to give favors. That's quite pleasant. And they have reworked the erudite, cyborg, synthetic, psionic, chosen one, and chosen of X, being chosen of the composer, chosen of the instrument, eater, etc., to include new leader assignments. Let's look at these new changes. I'm not going to read through all of these different bonuses. I'm simply going to highlight what I think is probably the best bonus for each class. So in the ruler class, that +1 pop assembly from synthetic is, I think that's hands down the best. You could make a case for chosen one granting +20% governing ethics attraction. That is going to boost, as long as you've made your governing ethics factions the happiest, that's going to boost your unity output and increase happiness across all of your planets. So that is good. And +1 tech alternatives from erudite is nice, but usually that comes a bit too late in the game to really be worthwhile. If you have a commander assigned to a fleet, again, synthetic is probably the best choice here. Getting +10% ship firing rate and +10% ship armor hardening is probably the best bonus here. Armor hardening is the best hardening type, it's better than shield hardening, and it really helps you with dealing with bypass weaponry. A case could be made for the chosen one granting +20% shield hardening and +20% ship weapons damage. However, you can only have one chosen one in your empire, and therefore you can't get this on every single ship in your fleet. If you have a general, it really depends what you're trying to achieve. If you're trying to minimize the combat damage taken by your armies, erudite can be very good. Increasing disengagement chance and reducing damage taken can keep your armies in the fight for longer, and you can then withdraw with them when they've retreated and then land them back down the planet to have another go. However, in most situations, synthetic is probably going to be the best. Again, army collateral damage will allow you to obliterate the populations of planets. Amongst scientists, erudite is now the best trait. Getting 10% additional experience and one trait alternative will allow your scientists to be the best scientists that they can be. For Galactic community resolutions, it's probably going to be cyborg. Diplomatic weight from technology at +5% is probably going to boost you the most, though if you've got a very happy population, diplo weight from pops could be good as well. Amongst Federation, well, they're all the same, except Chosen One grants you -25% cohesion ethics penalty. So I guess pop that one in the Galactic community, but really, you shouldn't want a Federation envoy which is a Chosen One. That's such a waste of your Chosen One. Planetary Governors is where it is going to get very spicy. Again, synthetic is probably the best trait here, giving you 5% resources from robot jobs across the board. That's 5% research, 5% alloys, 5% minerals, 5% everything except amenities and trade value. Other than that, cyborg is also very good. Increasing research from jobs by +10% and also not increasing the researcher upkeep is going to be really good if we're trying to maximize our research income and get ahead of our opponents. However, if we're not bothering with research, then that's not so great. Erudite I will give an honorable mention to here because reducing pop upkeep and pop amenities usage by 10% is very good if we combine it with other bonuses like having a dictator. We can get pop amenities usage down to, I'm pretty sure, -45 or -50%, which massively increases our pop efficiency empire-wide and reduces the number of pops we therefore need to have working amenity-producing jobs. In sad last place, we have the Psionic or Chosen One, +10% or 20% jobs, unity from jobs is just trash. Don't even talk to me about it. Really, I think this should boost stability by +5. You're unified, give us the extra stability, don't just increase unity from jobs. But then again, Psionic, because you can get them so early and they do give you all those other resource production bonuses, can be a bit overwhelmingly powerful if picked early on, so I can see why they don't want to just maximize psionic efficiency. On your screen now, we can also see what the chosen of each different Covenant owner is like. I'm not going to jump through all of these because honestly, most of the time, you don't really get much choice with exactly who you can pick. You get a couple of options. Sometimes it's the same leader type. Other times you just don't have the right leaders in the right places. So having a choice here is not something you get very often, and therefore I'm not really going to rank these right now. Plus there's just so many of them. I am, however, going to talk about my thoughts on this tech rebalance while I leave this up on your screen. Overall, I'm very happy with the ideas that have been mentioned in this dev diary. I really like the idea of tech spreading across the galaxy. I think some mechanics a little similar to institutions from EU4 could make sense. Possibly these breakthrough technologies are a bit like institutions. Once they've been researched somewhere first, maybe they actually get progressively more expensive rather than less expensive. However, you naturally get some sort of spread modifier over time, so you don't actually have to research them, they just spread into your empire. That's just a thought there, because the gating really does hurt the AI I found in my games. It means the AI is farther behind the player than I've basically ever seen them. If you don't pick the breakthrough technology, it does reappear, but due to the nature of how the tech rolling works, it won't reappear immediately on your next pick from the technology pile. That means that if you or the AI have to research something else, because maybe it's weighted very highly for the AI, or for you, you know you have to get it, that's going to put you back quite a few technologies before you can jump back into the breakthrough tech. And while you are researching these breakthrough technologies, you're unable to research other technologies, which means you will start to fall behind your neighbors if they're not researching their breakthrough technologies, somewhat paradoxically, until you, of course, have completed your breakthrough and hit that next level before they have. Increasing researcher upkeep by increasing research speed seems unnecessary. This means that, for example, the discovery tradition is now very painful. Yes, you get minus 20% researcher upkeep, but right at the end you also get plus 10% researcher upkeep for a net of only minus 10%. Ouch. Also, the special Ascension perk, which grants you plus 10% technology speed, research speed, that also grants plus 10% researcher upkeep, making it pretty much trash. Not only can you have 2 leaders on your council, which will grant you the same bonuses without having to take an Ascension perk, but why would you want plus 10% researcher upkeep if you could avoid it and instead put 1 leader down on your main research world planet, and that leader could be a cyborg or could have the analyst trait and grant plus 10% researcher output. Just a few things to think about. It's good that the devs are changing up the meta in the game. I'm very happy with the direction that some of the ideas are going in. I think the execution does need some work, and that is why we have betas. This is an open beta, don't forget, and there is a feedback form that you can fill in. I will make sure to link that down in the description so you can go and give your feedback on this beta. Make sure to go and play it. Make sure to have yourself a very Merry Christmas and a Happy Holiday, and a Happy New Year as well if I don't see you before then.